Hey guys, don't know if you've caught our podcast so far. So we think, myself and Emma Freedman, we cast an eye over the racing on the weekend, discuss all the big topics within racing and what an industry it is. You can catch the podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your great podcasts, and this will certainly be your favourite after you have a listen. This little sneak peek is our Sydney preview. Some great racing coming up, including the gloaming, which will really impact the spring champion market as well. And without giving too much away, Emma may have a futures bet that could be impacted on that front. And we can't forget the $2 million Hill Stakes as well. You can catch all that and more on the podcast. Enjoy. The following podcast contains opinions from paid professionals. The information provided in this podcast is general in nature and not advice. For free and confidential support, call 1-800-858-858 or visit gamblinghelponline.org.au. Hey, we've got good races in Sydney too. The race I know it might not be the headline act prize money-wise, but the race I'm probably most looking forward to would be the gloaming. We get to see Swift Falcon, Henline, Tenbury Wells, and this is a race that's going to change the complexion of a spring champion market, which I know you're invested in. And it could well impact the Derby market. In fact, it will impact the Derby market. I genuinely think Tenbury Wells is a huge Derby chance based off what we've seen, albeit at the provincial so far. And today's not D-Day, but I want to at least see it giving a strong showing. What's your read for the gloaming?
No doubting that with Tenbury Wells. He's a horse on the up. He comes out of a provincial race, so it's a big step up in grade on Saturday, albeit he competed in these hot Group 1s and Group 2s as a 2-year-old. But I think going towards a Derby, he's the horse that I'll have eyes for flashing home late. In terms of Swift Falcon, he was brilliant last Saturday. He's on the quick backup. They've found the key to this guy. You don't back up these horses, especially in these kind of races, unless you're really confident. And so the Hawks team at the moment, they are on just an upward trajectory. They are flying at the moment. They've had, I think, 3 stakes winners in 2 Saturdays. Macarena, we saw Swift Falcon last weekend as well. So they're in a rich vein of form. Henlane's the interesting one, and you're right. I do have something at stake here in terms of futures bets, but don't mention that to me because I also had something at stake with a futures bet with Autumn Glow last Saturday as well, as many did. So, but you go and take a look at his last start down in Melbourne at Moonee Valley that night where he finished, he flashed home behind Evaporate, who lines up in a Caulfield Guineas. Ooh, I'm not sure the 1,800 metres is nearly enough. He might need the extra 200 in the Spring Champion Stakes in a couple of weeks' time, but this colt by Done Deal, he's a flashy type. He's a beautiful horse. And everything that happened at Moonee Valley 2 weeks ago, they're spacing his runs 2 weeks apart. So that's why he did go back down to Melbourne. Says to me that he is nearly on full cylinders heading towards a gloaming and then a spring champion.
Yeah, it feels a bit apples and oranges, but Swift Falcon's run rated higher. And then you've got Henlon's run, which was, is coming out of better company, and the form out of those races has looked good. So how do they marry up? My read might be similar to you. If Swift Falcon's going to have a day, I think it's probably Saturday in the gloaming.
Yeah.
I think it turns towards Henlon once we get to a spring champion. And then Tenbury Wells, we'll just see. Might find that turn of foot a little bit too sharp on Saturday, but once we get out to a Derby trip, I think we'll see that horse's best. So, yeah, those markets available at Tab. October 26th, the Spring Champion, and the Derby, of course, on November 2. Currently, broadsiding $4.50 favourite, Henline $6 and Tenbury Wells around 11.
So you wouldn't have thought that broadsiding would be heading to a Spring Champion?
That's a Derby market, sorry, that one.
Oh, sorry.
So so my thought there is that's probably, I'd put that in the unlikely pile too, I think.
Yes, 100%.
So now might be a time to have a bet into that if you sort of want to play around
at your own risk.
Yeah, because if he does,
at your peril.
because if he walks in the Caulfield Guineas and they say, "Hey, we're heading straight to the Derby," yeah, you're going to be getting better than $11 about Tenbury Wells would be the read there. So the Hill Stakes.
Yes.
we shouldn't gloss over a race worth a couple of million. Royal Patronage was fantastic. In fact, it's been fantastic the past few starts. $3.50, Pericles $4.20, and Kovalika $5.50. Kovalika didn't have a stack of luck on the weekend.
No, no luck, to be honest. He was trapped behind a wall of horses and found it difficult to flash through the gap, but I thought he closed really nicely. And again, he's one on the quick backup that I don't think you can discount. I know he hasn't won a race since that Queensland Derby, but particularly his last two runs, so this preparation, he is showing us glimpses and efforts towards the end of his races that he's building towards something. So maybe that's this weekend. Interesting, I think, due to Gates, that they've opted to keep Pericles in Sydney. He was also nommed down there. So is this his opportunity to win a big money race? Of course, it's not a Group 1, but I think we've discussed before, I'm not quite sure that he is a true Group 1 week in, week out, weight for age performer. So maybe this is his race. The other one, though, is Golden Path for the Price and Kent Junior team, who comes out of that really hot Kingston town. That was won by Elias. Of course, he ran third in the Turnbull last week. Second was Chaelwolf, who came out and won an Epsom. Like, it as a form reference has been unbelievable over the last couple of weeks. He's one I might be keen to have an each way play on.
Hey, it's just occurred to me. So you know how we do our accountability check each week?
Yeah.
So I think there should almost be a retrospective. Can we take that back? So if you rewind, the only reason I bring it up now is I was just thinking about Team Hawks, and I thought, Emma asked me which stable was going to have a big spring and elevate themselves.
Is this a self-pat?
And I said, Team Hawks, they're airborne. You asked me which jockey. I said, there's only one you can have your eyes on, and that's Zach Lloyd to continue flying. We said Via Sistina is the best horse of the three, Pride of Jenny, Mr. Brightside. And then we got made to look like absolute mugs, and we put our hand up and said, sorry, got that wrong. We're idiots. Just ignore us. Maybe we're not that far off the mark. The other one
that was successful.
The other one, this isn't all about me, mostly.
Oh.
But Storm Boy, you kind of said, I think they're up against it here. 20 plus million, whatever they've spent, they're going to need a big ticket item, and I'm not sure they're going to get it. They might get it in the Everest, but you retracted after that first up win. And I told you at the time, I said, Emma, you got to stick to your guns. You know, it's one win. There still isn't the big ticket item. You said, no, he's the second coming of Jesus Christ. I changed my mind. Right? My thought is you might end up around the mark there. Now, we are wrong more than we're right. But my point is that racing is a fickle game, and it changes week to week. And, you know, we're all about the storylines and maybe putting our neck out there on the odd occasion. Some you get right, some you get wrong, but I think we need to look at it holistically. Do you mind if I talk about the midweeks for a sec?
Yes, I did tune in to a bit of you at the Kenzo yesterday.
Sorry.
For those who are tuning in, watching, yes, I'm not with Ben today because I'm at the Bathurst 1000. I'm actually in the truck before they start first practice, and I'm getting harassed in a move because I'm in a spot where someone much more important than me should be pressing buttons and getting this to air. So that's why this looks different. But I did tune into a bit of the midweeks, and there was something that happened in the last race that has upset the peace.
It has. So we didn't know it had happened, and maybe a more astute host would have picked up on it at the time. But Greenbelt and United Kingdom in the last race, they went tooth and nail, final 200. It looked, to all intents and purposes, though United Kingdom would go straight past, and Greenbelt just kept on rallying. United Kingdom probably either peaked or had a think. Either way, just couldn't get there. And people talk about jockeys throwing the kitchen sink. James McDonald on United Kingdom, he threw the kitchen sink, the laundry sink, the bathtub, absolutely the spa, everything at this horse, like everything, and just couldn't get it over the line. Anyway, it subsequently come out, and it's in the steward's notes that Chad Schofield, who was on Green Belt, exceeded the whip by 4, and they fined him accordingly. But one aspect to the Little Stewards report was they said that they had factored in the number of whip strikes that he exceeded the regulations by and the margin. And the margin was 0.02. And I thought that is a strange thing to reference, given in New South Wales we've never had a protest upheld based on whip use, but clearly they're factoring in the margin into the punishment for the jockey who exceeds the whip use. So it got me thinking to a discussion we've had several times. We need to either, I get it, the rule is probably there for optics. I think most in racing accept that. We need to be seen to be doing something. Most of us agree the whip isn't cruel in any way, it doesn't hurt horses, but optically it's not a good look, so we need to rectify it and limit the amount of whips a horse gets, particularly over the concluding stages. Fine. But you can't have horses winning by 0.02 when they exceed the whip use. Stewards accept that it may have played a part in the result. They've mentioned that in their stewards report. And yet there's no grounds for protest because the owners of the second horse don't know that until they read the stewards report. The rule is just, it just needs some tinkering, I think.
The rule needs overhauling because I don't think you can expect jocks, especially in high pressure situations, to be counting and then to also be noting when they make, like, what if you strike and you're at the 100, but that's counted not in the, it's the area. There's obviously it's a cut and dry rule, but there's too much room for error with it. And I agree that going forward, I mean, most jurisdictions, there's very few that have banned the whip. I don't think we're ever going to see ourselves do that. Speaking to a number of jockeys over the last couple of years, they do need it for safety reasons to be able to almost guide. And it's not always with using it. Sometimes it's using it in front so that they can guide a horse. You can see often if you go and have a look at replays, like watch the way that a whip is variously used, whether it is to help them steer a course, to go straight, or to get back on track. So I don't think we're ever going to see that. But the fact that it's count this many, like that's silly. It's silly. And I think it should be maybe at a totality for the entire race.
Well, where the evidence I think that it's broken is that when it gets to a big race, there is an unspoken rule that you just don't worry about it.
Pay the fine.
You win the race, you pay the fine, because the fact of the matter is you're better off to win the race rather than risk losing because you didn't encourage your horse as much as the bloke next to you. And you've got one guy who's stuck to the rules. Now this isn't a shot at Chad. He just happens to be the jockey that was relevant yesterday. But you've got one that stuck to the rules, one that didn't. And the one that stuck to the rules has been beaten by 0.02. The stewards say that was relevant to the finish and will include it in the jockey's fine. But you've got no chance of overturning. I don't agree with calls to have a template where you say, right, 4 additional whips is worth.
Oh, you don't know
5 inches, because they if they could have quantified that, they would have quantified that already.
You can't quantify it because all animals are different, and all race circumstances and race shapes and patterns and distances, and it's all so different. So it's something that they will not be able to quantify definitively because there's so many different variables taken into account in every single race that we hold. But there is something that I look at the way that the rule is structured at the moment and how much you're asking these guys to count and think, and it does my head in.
I completely agree. And is there room to maybe have a threshold where if you breach it by a certain amount, you simply lose the race? Is that too far the other way? I think it is too far, but there's got to be a ramification beyond a small fine for a jockey, because the difference between first and second in terms of prize money is so big and so significant. Not to mention in some races we're talking long-term breeding rights, etc., etc. Eventually, we saw it in Melbourne, they had a dead heat and they simply had to overturn it. I think we're going to reach a point where it happens in New South Wales as well.
Yeah, no doubting that. Any
Anyway,
final plays for the weekend?
no, not overly, but you know where you can get them. Thursday nights, 7 p.m. Black Bookers, Sky Thoroughbred Central. We'll catch you guys
And
there.
he's done it again. Hey,
Uh,
next week, we're actually going to have 2 eps for you next week. 2
yeah,
eps. We're going to have one on Monday and then one on Thursday because now we're getting into the nitty gritty, the grand final territory in terms of the Group 1 $20 million Everest plus the Group 1 Caulfield Cup. We're going to go to 2 eps a week to make sure that you're all across all the big issues and hopefully chat to some of the big participants in the game as well to get their thoughts on the races that have happened and also going forward.
yeah. Well, Thursdays is a bit late for a recap, isn't it? We kind of recap our own musings, but results-wise, I think there's going to be a lot of talking points coming Monday. All of the issues have they've simmered away for a while and we can unpack them, which will be good fun. I think it's important at this time of year to have the two. So Monday and Thursday going forward. Good luck on the weekend, Em, and good luck with your Henlon Spring Champion long-term bet. I hope at least you hit the line strongly.
I want to hit the line strongly. I don't need to be winning on the weekend, but I'd love to see him hitting the line stylishly and then heading towards the spring champion with T Berry on board. I know he's really excited to ride this colt again. So yeah, here's my one that I've got big eyes for over the next few weeks. Thank you for tuning in to So We Think. We'll catch you on Monday.
Enjoy Bathurst.
You win some, you lose more. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.